MTC. Unit 02, No Analysis. Comma. Evan's eyes opened wide and his mouth made the shape of an O, which happened whenever something surprised him. Evan, oh. You don't mean we're leaving Sydney? He asked. His mother had just told him they were leaving Sydney for his father's work. But what about school? Said Evan, interrupting her, a thing he knew he was not supposed to do but which he felt he would be forgiven for on this occasion. Evan. And what about Carl and Daniel and Martin? How will they know where I am when we want to do things together? Carl, Daniel, Martin? His mother told him that he would have to say goodbye to his friends for the time being but that she was sure Evan would see them again. Evan. Say goodbye to them? Say goodbye to them. He kept repeating himself, sounding more and more anxious with every repetition. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, No 01. Comma. Dave sat up on his surfboard and looked around. Dav. He was the last person in the water that afternoon. Suddenly something out toward the horizon caught his eye and his heart froze. It was every Safa's worst nightmare, the fin of a shark. And it was no more than 20 meters away. 20. He turned his board toward the beach and started kicking his way to the shore. Shivering, he gripped his board tighter and kicked harder. I'm going to be okay, he thought to himself. I need to let go of the fear. 5 minutes of terror that felt like a lifetime passed before he was on dry land again. 5. Dave sat on the beach and caught his breath. Dav. His mind was at ease. He was safe. He let out a contented sigh as the sun started setting behind the waves. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, No 02. Comma. It was a day I was due to give a presentation at work, not something I'd do often. As I stood up to begin, I froze. A chilly pins and needles feeling crept over me, starting in my hands. Time seemed to stand still as I struggled to start speaking, and I felt a pressure around my throat, as though my voice was trapped and couldn't come out. Gazing around at the blur of faces, I realized they were all waiting for me to begin, but by now I knew I couldn't continue. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, No 03. Comma. Ryan, an 11-year-old boy, ran home as fast as he could. 11 Ryan. Finally, summer break had started. When he entered the house, his mom was standing in front of the refrigerator, waiting for him. She told him to pack his bags. Ryan's heart soared like a balloon. Ryan. Pack for what? Are we going to Disneyland? He couldn't remember the last time his parents had taken him on a vacation. His eyes beamed. You're spending the summer with Uncle Tim and Aunt Gina. Tim Gina. Ryan groaned. Ryan. The whole summer. Yes, the whole summer. The anticipation he had felt disappeared in a flash. For 3 whole miserable weeks, he would be on his aunt and uncle's farm. 3. He sighed. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, No 04. Comma. Megan looked up and saw angry grey clouds rolling across the water. Meghan. The storm had turned and was coming her way. She stood up and reached for her sandals. That's when she spotted the dog splashing around in the middle of the lake. At first she thought he was playing. She watched for a second or two, then realized the dog wasn't playing. 1, 2. He was trying to keep from going under. With her heart pounding like a trip hammer, she ran into the water and started swimming toward the dog. Before she got to the dog, the rain started. She saw the dog, and seconds later he was gone. She pushed forward frantically, her arms reaching out in long strokes, her legs kicking harder and faster. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, No 05. Comma. It was time for the results of the speech contest. I was still skeptical whether I would win a prize or not. My hands were trembling due to the anxiety. I thought to myself, did I work hard enough to outperform the other participants? After a long wait, an envelope was handed to the announcer. She tore open the envelope to pull out the winner's name. My hands were now sweating and my heart started pounding really hard and fast. The winner of the speech contest is Josh Brown. The announcer declared. Josh Brown. As I realized my name had been called, I jumped with joy. I can't believe it. I did it. I exclaimed. I felt like I was in heaven. Almost everybody gathered around me and started congratulating me for my victory. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, No 06. Comma. Alice looked up from her speech for the first time since she began talking. Alice. She hadn't dared to break eye contact with the words on the pages until she finished, for fear of losing her place. Actually, she'd just hoped for two simple things: not to lose the ability to read during the talk and to get through it without making a fool of herself. Now the entire ballroom was standing, clapping. It was more than she had hoped for. Smiling brightly, she looked at the familiar faces in the front row. Tom clapped and cheered and looked like he could barely keep himself from running up to hug and congratulate her. Tom. She couldn't wait to hug him, too. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, No 07. Comma. One night, my family was having a party with a couple from another city who had 2 daughters. The girls were just a few years older than I, and I played lots of fun games together with them. The father of the family had an amusing, jolly, witty character, and I had a memorable night full of laughter and joy. While we laughed, joked, and had our dinner, the TV suddenly broadcast an air attack, and a screeching siren started to scream, announcing the red situation. TV. We all stopped dinner, and we squeezed into the basement. The siren kept screaming and the roar of planes was heard in the sky. The terror of war was overwhelming. Shivering with fear, I murmured a panicked prayer that this desperate situation would end quickly. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, No 08. Comma. The rain was more than a quick spring shower because in the last 10 minutes, it had only gotten louder and heavier. 10. The thunder was getting even closer. Sadie and Lauren were out there with no rain gear. Sadie Lauren. No shelter. And standing in the midst of too many tall trees or lightning rods. Sadie looked up, trying to see if the black cloud was moving. Sadie. But it was no longer just one cloud. It appeared as though the entire sky had turned dark. Their innocent spring shower had turned into a raging thunderstorm. Maybe we should go back the direction we came from. Sadie said, panicked. Sadie. Do you know which way we came? Lauren asked, her eyes darting around. Lauren. Sadie's heart fell. Sadie. Sadie realized with anxiety that she didn't even know where she'd taken her last 10 steps from. Sadie. Every angle looked exactly the same. Every tree a twin to the one beside it. Every fallen limb mimicking 10 others. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, No 09. Comma. Ro jumps for joy when he finds a cave because he loves being in places where so few have ventured. Row. At the entrance he keeps taking photos with his cell phone to show off his new adventure later. Coming to a stop on a rock a few meters from the entrance, he sees the icy cave's glittering view. He says, incredibly beautiful. Stretching his hand out to touch the icy wall. Suddenly, his footing gives way and he slides down into the darkness. He looks up and sees a crack of light about 20 meters above him. 20. Phone for help, he thinks. But he realizes there's no service this far underground. He tries to move upward but he can't. He calls out, "Is anyone there?" There's no answer. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, Number 10. Comma. Something inside told me that by now someone had discovered my escape. It chilled me greatly to think that they would capture me and take me back to that awful place. So, I decided to walk only at night until I was far from the town. After 3 nights walking, I felt sure that they had stopped chasing me. I found a deserted cottage and walked into it. Tired, I lay down on the floor and fell asleep. I awoke to the sound of a far-away church clock, softly ringing 7 times, and noticed that the sun was slowly rising. As I stepped outside, my heart began to pound with anticipation and longing. The thought that I could meet Evelyn soon lightened my walk. Evelyn. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, Number 11. Comma. Our class of 1960 was going to be returning for our momentous 50th reunion, but I had sadly stated to one of my 4 kids that regretfully, I was going to miss the reunion because I just couldn't afford the trip. 196050. Then one evening my youngest daughter, Kelly, handed me an envelope and said, "Read this later." Kelly. A letter inside the envelope lectured me all about how important old friendships are at all ages and that I absolutely must attend my 50th reunion since it is a once-in-a-lifetime event. 50. Included within was a round-trip airline ticket to and from Syracuse and roughly $200 cash. Syracuse 200. The letter stated that all 4 siblings had met and agreed to pool their money to get me to the reunion. And don't even think about payback. I sat there in stunned silence. And I wept. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 02, Number 12. Comma. Rivera, who was closest to the dispenser, spun around. Rivera. He cast about, looking for the source of the fire, and for a second Steve thought he might miss the smoke. Steve. Then Rivera grabbed the burning cylinder and headed for the edge of the flight deck. Rivera. There was a crack like a rifle shot. Sparks and rockets ripped apart the night. Rivera rolled on the ground. Rivera. His entire arm was a glowing torch. Steve ran. Steve. When he reached the burning man, he plunged to his knees and ripped off his float coat. He used the vest to smother the flames on Rivera's arm and back, screaming for a medic even though he knew he wouldn't be heard.